Hey YouTube, it's Eric. Good evening. In this video tonight, this is a very intriguing document that I got about a year and a half ago or so. I found it from a rare bookseller in San Francisco. But this was a general in the United States Army, a brigadier general, Herbert C. Holdridge, and he's the only. Well, there's been very few generals and men of rank in let's say the U.S. intelligence agencies and the various departments who have had the courage to speak out against the Vatican. Holdridge is one of the few in the 20th century. Other great general, Colonel Fletcher Prouty, put the blame on the Catholic Church for the instability in Vietnam. And Fletcher Prouty in his book, JFK, says that the mass Catholic migration movement from North Vietnam into South Vietnam was one of the critical components of the Vietnam War. Fletcher Prouty was great. William Cooper spoke out against the Vatican as well, but Herbert C. Holdridge is kind of like an unknown figure in American history. When people think of generals in the 20th century, they think of Smedley Butler. Smedley Butler, he was great, but he didn't criticize the Vatican. He didn't take it to that level. So I'm going to be reading out of this. This is actually a very rare document here. Let's just stop my camera, go to screen share. I'm going to show you here. This document that I just showed you is only in one library in the world on the WorldCat database. See here, it's titled, it's a letter that Holdridge wrote to I'll show you the link. I put this on the internet too, so you can get this letter as a PDF. I've already scanned this onto the internet. And the various other documents that I've been collecting from Holdridge. I plan to write a biography on this general, but it's going to be very tough to do now with all the COVID restrictions because his personal papers are located at the University of Oregon. And it doesn't look like I'm going to be able to travel to the U.S. anytime soon with the COVID restrictions. So, but in the meantime, I've collected about 19 documents from Holdridge, and you can find those. I linked this in the description right here on my archive.org account. This is all the works from Holdridge that I've collected. Here, this was titled "To the President of the United States, the Congress of the United States, the Supreme Court of the United States." Subject: classification of the hierarchy of the Vatican and its agents in the United States as subversives. And he wrote this on July 4th, 1954. The only copy listed in WorldCat is in the United Kingdom in London at the British Library in St. Pancras. 3,600 miles away from my location. You see, it's just a little 3-page pamphlet. I'm going to read it to you here. It's very interesting. Holdridge was very on point in his assessment of the Vatican. I'm just going to get a photo of him up here. Actually, here's a photo of Holdridge in uniform. Interesting. He left the army in 1945. I think at the end of World War II. I think that if you read his book here, "How to Gain Freedom from Economic Slavery," you see that he was starting to become very dissatisfied with the army. Like, for instance, like he was being while in Chicago, like he was seeing that the army was being sent out to suppress, protesters and assault civil liberties on the street, for instance, which disturbed him. And also, Holdridge came hip to the fact that the U.S. military was totally captured by Catholic action or captured by Rome. You're going to see that here in his letter. But I'm going to read a little excerpt from Holdridge's book. This is a great book, "How to Gain Freedom from Economic Slavery." I found a copy of this here. He wrote this in 1961. But this letter in question is from 1954. There's a photo of Holdridge there in uniform. I got a few photos of him up here, and I'll change those as I'm reading. So we start here. So this was the letterhead is to the President of the United States, the Congress of the United States, and the Supreme Court of the United States. Subject of the letter is classification of the hierarchy of the Vatican and its agents in the United States as subversives. They absolutely are subversive. Just think of, it's worldwide, the pedophilia scandal, but just think of how many children that have been raped in the United States by Roman Catholic clergy. But we continue. Holdridge writes, "In fulfillment of my oath to defend the Constitution of the United States and within my duties as a responsible citizen, I present these charges against the secular political hierarchy of the Vatican and Rome and its representatives in the United States as subversive to our Constitution and as a grave danger to our republic and our free institutions. I imply no criticism of the Roman Catholic religion as such, and stand willing to defend its freedom of expression as guaranteed by our Constitution. So that's a little intro. So now we get into bullet point 1. The Roman Catholic hierarchy and the Vatican stand before the world as a secular political state, ruled as a dictatorship by a secular ruler, an Italian politician, the Pope in Rome. And this was written when Pope Pius XII, Eugenio Pacelli, Hitler's Pope, was still in office. It includes a leadership and an organized population extending all over the world. Within the United States, it constitutes a state within a state, or the deep state. And I've been saying for years that the Roman Catholic Church is the, quote, deep state. Holdridge continues, its doctrines are diametrically opposed to the American concepts of democracy and freedom. This foreign-dominated leadership included membership in the United States, such as cardinals, archbishops, bishops, and priests. It is bound by an oath of personal loyalty to the heads of this political dictatorship, the Pope in Rome, and must obey his absolute orders, even though such orders conflict with the Constitution of the United States. This foreign-dominated dictatorship has openly declared war on the Constitution of the United States and the safeguards of liberty established therein. In two major pronouncements which constitute the, quote, party line of the secular political state, that being the Vatican, the syllabus of errors of Pope Pius IX and the encyclicals of Pope Leo XIII, every freedom written to our Declaration of Independence and in the preamble and Bill of Rights of our Constitution is condemned point by point. I'm going to repeat that last line again. Holdridge is saying that every single freedom that is embodied in the U.S. Constitution is condemned in the major papal documents, the syllabus of errors of Pope Pius IX, and he lists all of the encyclicals of Leo XIII. Leo XIII was a total tool of the Jesuits, as was Pius IX. You see here, in two major pronouncements which constitute the party line of the secular political state, the syllabus of errors of Pope Pius IX and the encyclicals of Pope Leo XIII, every freedom written into our Declaration of Independence and in the preamble and Bill of Rights of our Constitution is condemned point by point. Now, just add how fitting that when Roman Catholic Joe Biden, while vice president, was swearing in the Jesuit-trained CIA director John Brennan, who went to Fordham University, he swore him in on the Constitution minus the Bill of Rights. The Bill of Rights wasn't present when Biden was swearing in John Brennan. Holdridge continues, every member of the hierarchy, including those in the United States, is bound by his oath to the Vatican to like condemnation of our Constitution, thus aligning himself as an enemy of our nation. Actually, I'm going to do a future, I have a physical copy on the way, another great, this was in the late 20th century, but in the 1890s, another U.S. Brigadier General, Thomas Harris, was exposing the Vatican like Holdridge was. Thomas Harris published 2 books exposing the Vatican's role in the Abraham Lincoln assassination and culminating in orchestrating the U.S. Civil War as well. That was Brigadier General Thomas Harris, and I'm going to be doing future videos on him as well. I would just add another U.S. Navy Secretary Richard Thompson, also in the 1890s, wrote a fantastic book exposing the Jesuits called The Footprints of the Jesuits, which you should all read. That's on my archive.org account. So I'm just repeat that last bullet. Every member of the hierarchy, of the Vatican hierarchy, including those in the United States, is bound by his oath to the Vatican to like condemnation of our Constitution, thus aligning himself as an enemy of our nation. Through the hierarchy, the absolute orders of this foreign secular ruler are carried down to every Roman Catholic in the United States who must knowingly or unknowingly become party to the subversion of our Constitution. Our Roman Catholic brothers, indoctrinated from childhood in the philosophies of spiritual and intellectual dictatorship, find an easy step to accept political dictatorship. Every member of the hierarchy, including those in the United States, has further sworn a dying enmity towards all, quote, heretics, every non-Catholic individual in government being included in the long-established pronouncements of the Vatican as being, quote, heretical. This applies to every non-Catholic public official in the United States from the president on down. These so-called, quote, heretics in the traditional practice of the Spanish Inquisition must be rooted out by force and violence, which is the accepted technique of the Vatican. I'll repeat that last line. So the heretics, the enemies of the Vatican, and Holdridge is even saying here, the Vatican views all, non-Catholic politicians as heretics deep down. These so-called, quote, heretics must, in the traditional practice of the Spanish Inquisition, be rooted out by force and violence, which is the accepted technique of the Vatican. The Vatican and its foreign-dominated hierarchy in the United States has established a hostile, militant, and even semi-military organizations within our borders. Its members likewise sworn to personal loyalty to the Pope in Rome or coming under the domination of this foreign political dictator, and are pledged to undermine our institutions. And he lists the Knights of Columbus and the Society of Jesus, or Jesuits, etc. There's many of the groups, the Knights of Malta, the Knights of St. Gregory, the Knights of St. Maurice and Lazarus. The Roman Catholic Church, as Lord Robert Montagu, a British statesman, said, is the biggest secret society in the world. Freemasonry in itself, is like a secret society within the larger Roman Catholic secret society. But we continue. It has infiltrated members of these subversive organizations and other collaborationists, indoctrinated in its anti-American ideologies into public office, from lowest to highest, to undermine our institutions from within. It functions under its own canon law, and where inconsistent with public law, ignores our law. He's referring again to the Vatican. This secular political hierarchy injects itself into both foreign and domestic affairs of the United States, as it has for centuries interfered with the external and internal affairs of other nations, most recently of Hitler in Germany, Mussolini in Italy, and Franco in Spain. It was an important influence behind the brutal feudal war in Korea. Evidence exists that has been a powerful drive in the United States for war in Indochina. It participates aggressively in the affairs of the countries of Latin America and is one of the forces of reaction behind the violence in Guatemala. And actually, if you've seen on my video, I have a video of E. Howard Hunt, a CIA officer, admitting that during the CIA Operation PB success in Guatemala in 1954, the year Holdridge is writing this, Jesuit order equals 54 in gematria. But in that interview on my channel, E. Howard Hunt, a CIA agent, says that during that CIA coup d'état in Guatemala, they were actually receiving orders from the Archbishop of New York, Cardinal Francis Spellman. And Holdridge actually mentioned Spellman, right? And we'll see here a couple sentences down. Evidence exists that the Vatican has been a powerful drive in the United States for war in Indochina. It participates aggressively in the affairs of the countries of Latin America and is one of the forces of reaction in the violence in Guatemala. Through Cardinal Spellman, the voice of the Vatican in the United States, it has been a champion of Senator McCarthy, a member of the Knights of Columbus and trained in Jesuit schools. McCarthy went to Jesuit Marquette University, creator of the famed McCarthyism, and he kind of launched the inquisitive witch hunts of the, quote, Reds back in the 1950s. It has been a champion of Senator McCarthy, a member of the Knights of Columbus and trained in Jesuit schools, and thus drawing his inspiration from the Vatican rather from our Constitution. In his program undermining our Constitution and of creating dissension and disunity from one end of the United States to the other. It has persisted repeatedly in invading the prerogatives of the United States by gaining, contrary to our Constitution, special privileges for its periarchical schools, and in the face of repeated decisions of our Supreme Court, each instance becoming another overt act against our Constitution. Point 8, the Vatican and its hierarchy in the United States stand in open enmity towards our constitutional concepts of freedom of religion, deny religious tolerance for Roman Catholicism is accepted as a state religion, as in Spain, Colombia, and other parts of Latin America, and inflict reprisals against members of other faiths or those who profess no faith. It is the age-old ambition of the Vatican, openly declared and vigorously promoted, to turn the United States into a Roman Catholic nation. I'm just going to repeat that last line there. Holdridge ran for president on some fringe tickets in the 1950s also. Here's a little pamphlet for him, Take Back the Constitution, General Herbert C. Holdridge, candidate for the President of the United States. Yeah, that's from 1951. Holdridge says here, it is the age-old ambition of the Vatican, openly declared and vigorously promoted, to turn the United States into a Roman Catholic nation. Thus, its ambitions constitute an ever-present dire threat against freedom of religion established under our Constitution. Whenever its subversive political acts are challenged, the Vatican takes refuge behind our constitutional shield of freedom religion of the Vatican takes refuge behind our constitutional shield of freedom of religion, which it itself denies. The secular political hierarchy of the Vatican possesses fabulous wealth in the United States. And Holdridge writes $10 billion since 1946 for schools alone, but permits no scrutiny of its financial records by public authority. It extracts huge sums from the American taxpayers annually. This wealth is used to maintain in luxury a foreign political ruler in violation of our Constitution, and is expended locally to teach in its hierarchical schools and other institutions philosophies contrary to our Constitution. Under the hypocritical guise of serving humanitarian purposes, it pays not 1 cent of taxes on vast sums of this wealth and this income, adding this extra tax burden to the shoulders of non-Catholic taxpayers, a truly outstanding situation. And Holdridge continues here. This is bullet point 10 now. The secular political ambitions of the Vatican constitute a threat to the peace of the United States and of the world. While pretending to preach world peace, it has engaged openly in a campaign to incite a World War III with atomic and hydrogen bombs, using the weapons, planes, and soldiers of the United States to further its machinations, well knowing now that such a war must result in the destruction of the United States and in the annihilation of world civilization. Thus, by its own acts, it establishes itself as a world criminal. That's what Holdridge is referring to there as the Vatican. So, thus, by its own acts, the Vatican establishes itself as a world criminal. Here he gives hearing it. I'm on page 2 now of the little pamphlet. He's giving a summary. The above charges are voluminously and conclusively documented. As presented, they represent in the briefest outline the danger to our republic from the totalitarian power of the Vatican and its hierarchy. They have made no attempt at concealment of their purposes, but have operated openly and arrogantly in their campaign to subvert our Constitution. We are deeply concerned, and rightly so, over the dangers of communist subversion of our institutions. But as the communists are ambitious of establishing a world government of communism, a dictatorship under the control of the Kremlin, so is the hierarchy ambitious of establishing a world theocracy, a dictatorship under the control of the Vatican. The communists in the United States have numbered some 25,000 who have been under constant attack and who have been driven underground. Again, Holdridge was writing this back in 1954. The Vatican and its adherents, however, number some 30 million and operate openly and arrogantly to destroy our institutions, and yet no action, and he has that in capital letters, and yet no action has been taken by responsible public officials to protect our Constitution and our institutions against this powerful dictatorship, which has already declared war against our freedoms. If the Kremlin were to wage its campaigns as openly, an atom bomb would have been dropped on Moscow in short order. That's absolutely true. But we welcome to our bosoms this other powerful dictatorship, which is equally dangerous. Not only do high public officials not act to check this subversive force, but they actually fraternize publicly with its agents, lend them the prestige of their high office, and give aid and comfort to a declared enemy. Many officials of the United States, in violation of Article 1, Section 9, Paragraph 8 of our Constitution, have accepted papal decorations and honors. Just think of Nancy Pelosi kissing the ring of Pope Benedict XVI. Or Ronald Reagan. I have a video on my channel. U.S. President Ronald Reagan was knighted as a Knight of Malta while still being President of the United States in 1989. I could go on for hours with examples, but we're going to continue here with Holdridge. You see here, I'm going to repeat that last sentence. Many officials of the United States, in violation of Article 1, Section 9, Paragraph 8 of our Constitution, have accepted papal decorations and honors, unquestionably being influenced in their subsequent judgments and actions in favor of the Vatican. Well, I can think of two, both, President Barack Obama and Joe Biden. Biden's openly Roman Catholic, Obama the secret Catholic, but both Obama and Biden would carry a rosary around with them everywhere. Biden does now. Obama carried his rosary with him for his full 8-year term. So now Holdridge gives recommendations here at the bottom. He says, so the first recommendation is that one quote, that unless and until they publicly reject all teachings of the Vatican threatening our institutions, the hierarchy of the Vatican, including members in the United States, and including the Knights of Columbus, the Society of Jesus, Dominicans, Franciscans, Benedictines, and all other co-fraternities of the Roman Catholic Church, be placed forthwith on the subversive list of the Attorney General and subjected to the same restraints as are applicable to other subversives. Point 2, that a special committee of Congress be appointed to bring to light and to publicize the full record of overt and covert subversive activities of the Vatican and its agents, as is now done relative to the communists. Point 3, that representatives of the Vatican in the United States, including all who have taken an oath of loyalty to this foreign political ruler, be registered as agents of a foreign state, and that action be taken to cancel their citizenship in the United States as inconsistent with their oath to a foreign secular government. Point 4, that all officials elected or appointed to public office in the United States be required to reject openly and publicly all loyalties to any secular political state, including the Kremlin and the Vatican, otherwise to be disqualified for public office. Point 5, that the right to tax exemption shall be revoked of any eleusiniary institution of a sectarian character, unless such institution qualifies for tax exemption by presenting its books for an auditing, and such audit shall establish that no funds pertaining to said institution shall have been transferred to any foreign secular state or to the American agents thereof, or shall have been used for the purchase of newspapers, real property, or any commercial investment to underwrite any campaign for periarchical school tax exemption, or to nullify any provision of the Constitution of the United States. In point 6 in the recommendations, that a program of education be initiated on the orders of the Voice of America to inform the American people, and particularly our Roman Catholic brothers, who may not be aware of the dangers to our freedoms of the philosophies of the Vatican, or of the facts of this threat to our Constitution. Very respectfully yours, Herbert C. Holdridge, Brigadier General, U.S. Army. And there's this, I'm just going to go back here to the screen share, or turn on my cam. There we go. There's a signature there. Holdridge gives these his source, and he has on the last page here. He gives some sources, documentation. I have some of these books that he cites on my archive.org. You know, this is the recommend you, and I'll show you that you can read. I put this on PDF here, but you know, this is very informative. The citations he gives. For instance, he quotes the Vatican Secretary of State Cardinal Gasperi in 1922, saying, "quote The opinion of those who wish to separate politics from religion is erroneous and pernicious." End quote. He quotes here. This is the kind of the famed Jesuit oath. It's also the Knights of Columbus oath, the fourth degree. It's in the U.S. Congressional Record. There you see there, February 15th, 1913. This is the extreme oath. They say will murder all heretics when instructed. And again, this is the letterhead. This is a U.S. Brigadier General. See, I'm not making that up. You see, Brigadier General, U.S. Army. This guy's kind of unknown in American history. He's probably one of the most patriotic Americans of the 20th century. Actually, you know, in this video here, I put a lot of Holdridge documentation on my. I'll put my screen share back on. But he actually says in Holdridge, I have another letter. I would show you it now, but it's still in laminate in my closet. But I found another rare letter from Holdridge that he wrote to Eisenhower, specifically on the topic of the Jesuits in 1959, and he titled it "The Pope's Commandos." Here it is on archive.org. But this is how Holdridge started his letter. Now you see here, this is to Dwight D. Eisenhower, President of the United States. This whole letter here is specifically on the Jesuits. He's talking about an article from the Saturday Evening Post, which is a great expose on the Jesuits from the Saturday Evening Post, which Holdridge is writing a letter to Eisenhower discussing the contents of that article and the implications. And that article from the Post is also on my archive.org here. But Holdridge says here to start his letter, this article provides conclusive documentation of the dire threat of this Roman Catholic order, that being the Jesuits, and of the forces of the Vatican affiliated with this order, which I have attempted to drive into the consciousness of yourself, officials of government, and the sleepwalking people of the United States for the past 5 years, risking my very life from day to day to do so. Alas, now you must listen, for the truth is spread before you from impartial sources. And he continues. But I recommend you read this letter also. The letter I would just read to you out of. And this is the kind of collection of documents I have from Holdridge on my website. If any of you guys live near the Oregon area, that's where his personal papers are. That's where I want to go to get access to them to write a biography on this general. But it doesn't look like I'm going to Oregon anytime soon with the COVID restrictions. Yeah, I'm just checking the comments now. Yeah, Duffy says Smedley Butler. Yeah, Smedley Butler was another great U.S. general. Unlike Butler was great on criticizing monopolistic capitalism. You know, his classic book War is a Racket. I have War is a Racket on my archive.org. But Butler didn't take it to the Vatican level like Holdridge did. And I think that's why Butler is more well known than Herbert C. Holdridge. But this is the document here that I'm reading out of. You can see here, I think my cam's still on there. That's why I'm holding it up. But there it is on the screen. 4-page document. The last page being his sources. And I'm glad you guys are enjoying the video. See, we got a big audience there. Scrolling through some of the comments. Nice to see you, Avedon. Nice to see you, Mark. Mr. Duffy. Shout out to all you guys watching the video. Yeah, DC's comment. Georgetown Jesuit Colleges supplies all of the staffers for the Congress and Senate who are actors reading scripts. Absolutely, that's a great point. The amount of staffers that go to Georgetown University and the Congress is totally unproportional relative to other schools. And if you haven't seen a Jesuit priest on my channel, I have video of Jesuit priests giving during House pro forma sessions in the U.S. Congress. Routinely, Jesuit priests are called in to give a prayer. I even have one comical video of a Jesuit priest, former chaplain of the Congress, Pat Conroy. He gives an exorcism in the Congress. But here's some more videos. I did over a year ago. I read another pamphlet I collected from Holdridge called "The Age of Barbarism." It kind of talks about our society's heading to a new dark age being led by forces of the Vatican. And here's that. If you want to watch this video, or that if you want to see this letter that Holdridge wrote to President Eisenhower on the topic of the Jesuits in video, I have this here on my channel. This was posted by Baganis, who made this into a video here, but his channel is no longer on YouTube. I'm not sure if he was censored or he took the channel down. I assume he'd been censored. He was a small channel though, but his channel is no longer there. But you can watch this. I put a little music soundtrack behind there too. But this here's again, this is a fantastic letter. You see Holdridge breaking down the Jesuit military organization, shock troops of the Vatican. Yeah, but just before I finish this video here, at Holdridge's, he wrote a book, another book I'm trying to get my hands on called "The Fables of Moronia." The word "moron" in the title, kind of showing how in that kind of fictional book, it's how our whole society is, stupid and it's made stupid by the Vatican. But he kind of points out all the hypocrisies in society. That was his fictional book. This was his nonfiction book here that he wrote later. How to Gain Freedom from Economic Slavery. General Herbert C. Holdridge. But you see here, he identified 4 forces which kind of threatened freedom and threatened the principles of the Constitution in the United States. And he identified these as the monopolists, that being a cartel capitalist or big money. Second, he identified the political arm of the Vatican in Rome. 3, the militarists barricaded in the Pentagon. And of course, the Pentagon was designed by a Knight of Malta Jesuit-trained John McShane. So yeah, I'm saving up just the biography on John McShane is like $300. The Jesuits are trying to hide that information, but I'm saving up to get a copy of that. I'm gonna try to scan it and put it on the internet. That's very occulted history that the Knights of Malta designed the U.S. Pentagon building, and the Pentagon I've showed in previous videos was modeled off of diagrams from Jesuits from the 17th century. So your three holders that have identified the militarists and the Pentagon as a threat, and then four the American communists, which the Vatican, and then again, all of these four kind of amalgamate into the political arm of the Vatican. Holdridge was, on point. He identified, the Vatican as, the enemy that it is. And there's very few men of rank in the U.S. government have had the courage to do that. Holdridge says here I'm just going to read his little excerpt on Vaticanism from his book. It says here, the second force barring the path to democratic reconstruction is the political arm of the Roman Catholic Church, centered in the Vatican and Rome. No criticism is intended of the Catholic worship as such. Since we truly believe in the principles of our Constitution, we are bound to uphold the principle of freedom of religious expression. But as everyone knows, the Vatican presents itself to the world as a temporal state as well as a religious organization. Therefore, we have the right and duty to scrutinize its secular policies as freely as we do those of other secular states. If we value our free institutions, we must take issue with the Vatican on several counts. Point 1. In the syllabus of errors of Pope Pius IX, every freedom listed in the Bill of Rights of our Constitution is vehemently condemned. This stand is still a fundamental doctrine of the Roman Catholic Church. Therefore, those who have pledged themselves to maintain the Constitution of the United States must resist its stand on these principles in their application in the United States, and must eject the proponents of these subversive philosophies from within our borders. We allege that the communists are attempting to overthrow our form of government by force and violence and hound them as, quote, subversives. But here we have it plainly and openly stated that this foreign state is an acknowledged enemy of our American institutions and is openly engaged in overthrowing them. Yet we welcome its representatives into our midst and never appreciate the danger. Point 2. The Vatican is promoting an uncompromising holy war against, quote, communism. Again, that's a subject for another video, but it's a masterful Hegelian dialectic. The Vatican and the Jesuits created modern communism, and then they created the modern kind of militant inquisition on communism. An example of that is Nazi Germany, for instance. All the top leadership being Roman Catholics. Hitler modeled the Nazi Party itself off the Jesuits, as admitted by Walter Schellenberg in his memoirs. You see, the Vatican is launching a quote, holy war, a crusade against, quote, communism. And because of the befuddlement of our political leaders on this issue and through the machinations of its agents, which have infiltrated into public office, into our armed forces, into our political organizations, into our economy, and into our school system, the Vatican has managed to hoodwink the American people into using our non-Catholic boys and our non-Catholic taxpayers to shed their blood and to pay the bills for the promotion of its ungodly wars. Amazingly, although it owns fabulous wealth in the United States, and Holdridge mentions tax-free, it makes no contribution to financing its own wars. Instead, and of course, the Vatican now has an archdiocese for the military services. That went in 1986. Instead, it siphons off vast sums obtained from tax-exempt activities to finance its own officialdom in Rome, as the Vatican did in Italy under Mussolini and in Germany under Hitler. It is promoting its fascist policies within the United States under the very noses of non-Catholic political leaders. Point 4, the Vatican creates intolerable conflicts and loyalty among American Catholic leaders. If they interpret the political presumptions of the Roman Catholic hierarchy strictly and yield loyalty to them, they cannot ipso facto be loyal to their oaths of office to the United States. The Vatican tolerated, quote, McCarthyism if it has not actively promoted that vicious program which is designed to accomplish the purposes set forth in the syllabus of errors, the destruction of our American concepts of freedom. The full record of the backstage machinations of the Vatican must be exposed, its agents registered, and its operations checked in our national and international policies, else the purposes of the government of the United States as written into our charters of liberty must perish. I think I'm going to end it there, but Herbert C. And this is the book I was reading out there, How to Gain Freedom from Economic Slavery. Herbert C. Holdridge, Brigadier General. This general is very on point. He's completely unknown, especially in terms of the quote-unquote truth community and the conspiracy movement. I'd never see this guy's name mentioned whatsoever. Before, like I found the documents from Holdridge on the Jesuits like a year and a half ago. There's virtually nothing on Holdridge in the quote unquote truther movement, or in truther circles. And I think that that's kind of credence to the Jesuits' ability to suppress history. Also, the historians, like, Holdridge's name is all like, never mentioned in even books criticizing the Roman Catholic Church. So that also is a credence to the Jesuits' ability to hide their machinations. Thank you guys. Appreciate you guys. Yeah, absolutely. Have it on Hitler viewed Heinrich Himmler as his own, as his Ignatius Loyola. Absolutely. Yeah, share this video. I recommend it. You guys. None of you guys need permission ever for me to share my videos. So share this far and wide. That's why I do eventually want to write a biography on this general, because I'd like to make him a well-known American figure, because he's no one knows of this guy. He's a very very incredible guy. Like if you read some of the letters that I've collected. But I appreciate that, Mark. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Oh yeah, Sarah says you said his name. Stream starts to buff. Yeah, that's Herbert C. Holdridge, U.S. Brigadier General. Yeah, that's who that's who this letter was penned by that I've been reading here. And again, I recommend you guys check out. I have 19 documents from him collected so far on archive.org. And I recommend you check all these out. A few of them too, like when he testified at the Congress. He specifically he exposes the Vatican's attempt to turn America into a fascist police state before the Congress. For instance, I found here he blamed the Vatican culpability in the Great Depression, and it's cartel capitalistic hoarding, and it's involvement with the Federal Reserve. And Holdridge was also like a patriot in terms of the Federal Reserve. He wanted to abolish the Jesuit bank in its entirety. So yeah, I think that's all for this one, guys. Peace and love, and I'll see you on the next video. Take care, everyone.